This is Living Power, Special HD Edition.
And you begin to live a life on a whole different plane. When Israel was about to enter the land that God had promised them, God gave them a directive about His laws and principles through Moses, and this is what God spoke through Moses essentially, and this is what He said in Deuteronomy 4:6. Observe them carefully, the laws, the principles of God. Observe them carefully, for this will show your wisdom and understanding to the nations who will hear about all these decrees and say, surely this nation is a wise and understanding people. Now personalize that verse and put your name in there. Observe them, God's words and laws, carefully. For this will show your wisdom, Dan, and understanding to the nations, who will hear about all of these decrees and say, surely this Dan is a wise and understanding person. Apply it that way. Because if you'll take the Word of God and apply it in your life, that's what will happen. You'll develop a wisdom that people will notice, and they'll want to know more about it. Now, when God said, observe those things carefully, He was saying to be careful to apply them the right way. Apply them the right way. It doesn't do you any good to know God's truths and not apply them, but you have to apply them the right way. You need to know them and apply them in your life, which not only changes you, but it will also affect those around you. They'll be influenced by what God's doing in and through your life. The fifth thing that you need to do is, the fifth step that you need to take is that you need to make sure that your plan or your plans line up with God's. Proverbs 16:9, in his heart a man plans his course, but the Lord determines his steps. This is so important. I've always been amazed at people who create plans, and then they just ignore God. Okay, I got a plan. I don't need God anymore. What? And people who claim to be Christians. Or here's the other one that we do. We come up with a great plan. Oh God, will you please bless my plan? It's not even from the Lord. But oh God, I really thought this through and I worked really, really hard at it. Will you please bless it? Listen, man can plan his course, but God is the one who determines the steps that you need to take. I've always been amazed at how we will sometimes we will come up with these unbelievable plans for solving our problems and think that we're doing the right thing. I knew a guy. This guy had gone through a very gut-wrenching divorce in his life. Is what had happened. And now, a few years after the divorce, this guy had been a deacon in his church. And now, I meet this guy. In fact, he was at a Bible conference that I was at. I meet this guy, and he's hanging out in bars. Because, this is what he's thinking, he believes that if he hangs out in bars, he would find a woman who had gone through a similar experience that he'd gone through, and they would understand each other and have a great relationship. Makes sense to him. And I said, so how many women have you met that fit the bill? And he said, most of them. He says, so how's that going? How's the relationship going? How come you're not married yet or dating them? And he says, are you kidding? Most of them are really messed up. And I said, they wouldn't be thinking the same thing about you now, would they? He just shrugged. Listen, when your plans don't line up with God's, you're destined for more heartache. When your plans don't line up with God's plans, you are destined for more heartache. The final step that God points out here of the 6 steps that we're mentioning here is let Christ be your example. Let Christ be your example. 1 Peter 2:21. To this you were called, because Christ suffered for you, leaving you an example that you should follow His steps. You should follow in His steps. Christ gave you an example and said, this is how you do it. Follow in my steps. Now don't compare your circumstances and situation with others. That's such a mistake. It's so wrong to do it that way. Everybody's experience is different. And trying to act the way somebody else did in a similar situation will just take your eyes off of God's leading. If you try to say, well, so-and-so handled it this way, so this is what I'm going to do, all you're doing is following that person's lead, not Christ. But your situation is different. And so there may be some similarities to somebody else, but it's not, you're not to act like somebody else, you're to act like Christ. Let him be your example.
Looking for a Bible study that's focused on the practical application of the Bible? Check out our website at theopenclass.com.
The sun cannot compare to the glory of your